With profound humble gratitude and love to all venerated enlightened masters, we bow to the Almighty in soulful gratefulness for gifting us with their holy blessed presence. May all beings be awakened by their divine grace.
Part 2 of 4.
Etc.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Since evil is here, haunting this world by necessary law, and it is the soul's design to escape from evil, we must escape hence. But what is this escape? In attaining likeness to God. Please continue watching for the wisdom of philosopher Plotinus, vegetarian.
No to vegan, so that all heavens and earth know that you are feeding the devils in hell with your own flesh.
Hieretismata means greetings in Greek. I'm Zoe. The hospitable citizens of Corfu know that the world will soon become vegan for permanent peace, so let us quickly build this loving paradise together. Plotinus was one of the most influential philosophers in antiquity after Plato and Aristotle. In his philosophy, there are three principles: the one, the intellect, and the soul. Historians of the 19th century invented the term Neoplatonism and applied it to Plotinus's philosophy. His metaphysical writings have inspired centuries of Islamic, Jewish, Christian, and Gnostic metaphysicians. The issue of happiness is one of Plotinus's greatest imprints on Western thought, as he was one of the first to introduce the idea that happiness is attainable only within consciousness. From all accounts, his personal and social life exhibited the highest moral and spiritual standards. He disliked talking about his own life, disapproved of meat, and refused medications containing animal substances. Plotinus's final words were, "Try to raise the divine in yourselves to the divine in the all." Long before his physical departure, the philosopher entrusted two of his closest disciples, Porphyry and Amelius, with the extensive task of collecting, revising, and compiling his writings. Thus, the Six Enneads was published to share Plotinus's precious insight with countless generations. It consists of 54 treatises varied in length, arranged in 6 sets of 9 Ennead in 3 volumes. The Enneads are sorted by levels of sophistication, starting with the first Ennead, which emphasizes ethical topics. Contented viewers, today we will continue with the virtue theme on our program, excerpts from the Six Enneads by Plotinus, vegetarian, part 2 of 2, on words of wisdom. The following excerpts are selected from the second tractate of the first Ennead. The first Ennead, second tractate, on virtue, section 1. Since evil is here, haunting this world by necessary law, and it is the soul's design to escape from evil, we must escape hence. But what is this escape? In attaining likeness to God, we read, and this is explained as becoming just and holy, living by wisdom, the entire nature grounded in virtue. But does not likeness by way of virtue imply likeness to some being that is virtue? To what divine being, then, would our likeness be? In fact, virtue is one thing, the source of virtue quite another, The material house is not identical with the house conceived in the intellect and yet stands in its likeness. The material house has distribution and order, while the pure idea is not constituted by any such elements. Distribution, order, symmetry are not parts of an idea. So with us, it is from the Supreme that we derive order and distribution and harmony, which are virtues in this sphere. The existences there, having no need of harmony, order, or distribution, having nothing to do with virtue, and nonetheless, it is by our possession of virtue that we become like to them. Thus much to show that the principle that we attain likeness by virtue in no way involves the existence of virtue in the Supreme, but we have not merely to make a formal demonstration, we must persuade as well as demonstrate. The First Ennead, Second Tractate, on Virtue, Section 2. First, then, let us examine those good qualities by which we hold likeness comes, and seek to establish what is this thing which, as we possess it in transcription, is virtue, but as the Supreme possesses it, is in the nature of an exemplar or archetype, and is not virtue. What then precisely is virtue, collectively and in the particular? The clearer method will be to begin with the particular, for so the common element by which all the forms hold the general name will readily appear. The civic virtues are a principle of order and beauty in us, as long as we remain passing our life here. They ennoble us by setting bound and measure to our desires and to our entire sensibility and dispelling false judgment. And, further, these civic virtues measured and ordered themselves, and acting as a principle of measure to the soul, which is as matter to their forming, are like to the measure reigning in the overworld, and they carry a trace of that highest good in the Supreme. Any participation in ideal form produces some corresponding degree of likeness to the formless being there, and participation goes by nearness. The soul, nearer than the body, therefore closer akin, participates more fully and shows a godlike presence, almost cheating us into the delusion that in the soul we see God entire. This is the way in which men of the civic virtues attain likeness. The First Ennead, Second Tractate, on Virtue, Section 3. We come now to that other mode of likeness which, we read, is the fruit of the loftier virtues. Discussing this, we shall penetrate more deeply into the essence of the civic virtue and be able to define the nature of the higher kind, whose existence we shall establish beyond doubt. To Plato, unmistakably, there are two distinct orders of virtue, and the civic does not suffice for likeness. Likeness to God, he says, is a flight from this world's ways and things. In dealing with the qualities of good citizenship, he does not use the simple term virtue, but adds the distinguishing word civic, and elsewhere he declares all the virtues without exception to be purifications. As the soul, by being interfused with the body, and by coming to share the body's states, and to think the body's thoughts, so it would be good, it would be possessed of virtue, if it threw off the body's moods and devoted itself to its own act, the state of intellection and wisdom, never allowed the passions of the body to affect it. The virtue of Sophrosone knew no fear at the parting from the body, the virtue of fortitude, and if reason and the intellectual principle ruled, in which state is righteousness. Such a disposition in the soul, become thus intellective and immune to passion, it would not be wrong to call likeness to God, for the divine too is pure, and the divine act is such that likeness to it is wisdom. But would not this make virtue a state of the divine also? No, the divine has no states. The state is in the soul. The act of intellection in the soul is not the same as in the divine. Of things in the supreme, soul grasps some after a mode of its own, some not at all. Virtue, in the same way, is a thing of the soul. It does not belong to the intellectual principle or to the transcendence. The First Ennead, Second Tractate, on Virtue, Section 7. The virtues in the soul run in a sequence correspondent to that existing in the overworld that is among the exemplars in the intellectual principle. In the supreme, intellection constitutes knowledge and wisdom. Self-concentration is sophrosony. Its proper act is its dutifulness. Its immateriality, by which it remains inviolate within itself, is the equivalent of fortitude. In the soul, the direction of vision towards the intellectual principle is wisdom and prudence, soul virtues not appropriate to the supreme, where thinker and thought are identical. All the other virtues have similar correspondences. And if the term of purification is the production of a pure being, then the purification of the soul must produce all the virtues. If any are lacking, then not one of them is perfect. The solution is in understanding the virtues and what each has to give. Thus, the man will learn to work with this or that as every several need demands. And as he reaches to loftier principles and other standards, these in turn will define his conduct. For example, restraint in its earlier form will no longer satisfy him. He will work for the final disengagement. He will live, no longer, the human life of the good man, such as civic virtue commands, but leaving this beneath him, will take up instead another life, that of the gods. For it is to the gods, not to the good, that our likeness must look. To model ourselves upon good men is to produce an image of an image. We have to fix our gaze above the image and attain likeness to the supreme exemplar.
Nobody can possibly be so hungry that they need to take a life in order to feel satisfied. They don't, after all, take a human life, so why take the life of an animal? Both are conscious beings with the same determination to survive. It is habit and laziness, and nothing else. Morrissey, vegan.
Tentative viewers, we are grateful for your company today. Coming up next is Memoirs of Goryeo, Historic Monuments in Kaesong, Part 1 of 2, right after noteworthy news. For the protection of our precious planet and countless future generations, may all people embrace the noble vegan lifestyle and live in harmony with our animal people co-inhabitants.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/WOW.
Nos programmes offrent plusieurs langues. Veuillez visiter suprememastertv.com/schedule et suprememastertv.com/WOW.
Nuestros programas ofrecen varios idiomas. Visiten suprememastertv.com/schedule y suprememastertv.com/WOW.
Műsoraink sok nyelvet tartalmaznak. Kérjük, tekintse meg itt! suprememastertv.com/schedule és suprememastertv.com/WOW.